information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 53, altimeter 3000.
People like you, organizations like RampCheck, I love you guys.
4, 5, 6. Gotta be down, ready now. You are clear for takeoff runway 21 left. Winds are calm. Stand by for the retrans on uniform. It's showtime.
What are you doing over there, Ryan? Ryan's like
Ryan is playing along with the intro music.
That was awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the RampCheck podcast. I'm Tony.
I'm Aaron. Ryan, that's you.
I can't hear you guys.
Oh, my God. No.
Now it's Ryan.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Check your audio, brother.
So, again, everybody, thanks for watching the RampCheck podcast live stream tonight. As you can see, we're still working bugs out off and on. We had everything working great. There's Ryan. Ryan.
Can you hear us?
Why is Ryan big on the screen? Oh, my gosh. This is embarrassing.
Oh, good Lord. All right. He's trying to figure it out. But, hey, you know what? I think, well, first off, welcome once again. And the technical issues tonight,
they're not Tony.
No, they're not. Ryan, you still can't hear us? Ryan, can you hear us? Testing 1, 2. Let's see. That's so funny because we could hear him earlier.
I know. It was working good. So Ryan's going to exit out. So,
yeah. Oh God, here we go again.
He'll be back in again. But anyway, so we do have our guest on standby.
Mark is sitting in the green room right now.
That's right. He's patiently waiting to come on and apparently associate himself with us, who seem we don't have our shit together. So hopefully he'll bear with us.
You know, Mark was should I say dumb enough to come on the podcast?
No, he's good. So we'll get to Mark in just a second. Let's see if Ryan gets back on here. If not, after a minute or so, what we'll do. What do you think? Should we bring Mark on in a minute?
Let's do it in just a second here. Also, one thing I want to do right now is let's check this out. Is the chat working? If you're watching us live on YouTube right now, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, send us a chat because apparently they had the hosting service that we use. They had they said, "Oh, well, we had a big upgrade," and
yeah, the upgrade really helped us out.
Turn your chat's back on. So anyway, but Aaron, do you have your chats up on your phone though, just in case?
I will pull those up.
Okay, very good. Still waiting on Ryan.
Yeah.
Nothing good. Yep. Oh, look, spinning setup just said yes. Okay.
Good,
Chat's
good.
still working. So, excellent.
Hess is watching on YouTube tonight, and
checking in, Hess.
Yeah.
Also, whoever else is watching, check in as well. Let us know. Say hello. And I did not mean to rhyme when I just did that. But
Aircraft Images, what's up, brothers? Hey, thanks again for watching. All right.
We're glad the chat's working. Where the hell is Ryan? Did he run get some dinner?
So spinny side up gives us the hello, the wave.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I heard Ryan. Maybe he's coming back. Let's see. Ryan, are you with us now? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear
us?
Us?
All right. Mark is patiently waiting. I think we forgot to tell Mark, even though he can hear us probably, we can't hear him yet until we actually activate him on the live stream. And we should have told him before. So this is our first official quote unquote studio guest joining us on the live stream. We had down at Red Flag, you remember we had Ahab join us in the truck for a few minutes, the Strike Eagle guy.
That was our pop-in guest.
That's right. So anyway, Well, I think we need to get Mark on here. I'm dying to hear from him. I can't wait to see what his hat looks
Let's
like
do
in
it.
color.
Let's do this. Hey,
Mark!
Gentlemen,
Sluggo.
how
Hey.
the heck are you, man?
How are you,
Man,
sir?
you guys must be hurting for people if you have me on as your very first studio guest.
Yeah. Well, we had to go with the tanker pilot first.
right?
Well, you know what, guys?
Because go ahead, Mark.
I say all that very lovingly because you three guys, we've had lunch together, we've talked together numerous times, and I am so happy to be back with you brothers again, and so glad that you guys have started this up again.
Awesome.
Back.
We're
Well,
grateful for your words, Mark.
Yep. And we're excited to be back, and we're super excited to have you on this time because now not only can we talk about some of the pictures you took and some of your experiences, we actually can show some of those pictures and the video at the same time. So it's pretty awesome. We're pretty excited.
It is. I sent you some pretty cool stuff, and you know
Yes,
what I
you
found
did.
out? My DoD, what's it called? Defense Visual Information Distribution System
Mhm.
login still works. I left the Air Force in 2007 and it still works.
Oh, wow.
Lucky
Wow.
for us, right?
Well, it is. And when it came time to write my book, I called them and I said, hey, I'm using pictures from Defense Visual Information Services. Is that okay? And they go, that's what it's there for. And they said, well, when did you get out? Well, I got out in 2007. My book's going to be released, 2017. They said, no, that's what we have it up there. I says, I don't owe you guys any money. I don't have to. He said, all you have to do is put photo image via DoD. And I said,
Oh,
great.
that's cool. Awesome.
So the other day when I searched air refueling videos, 14,792 videos came up.
Oh my gosh.
It's a little bit of watching.
Yeah, just a little bit. So,
So Mark, I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I just wanted to say, since you guys both welcomed him, I would like to say welcome back, Mark. And we're not hurting. We've got a line of people that just are dying to come on our show, but you're just one of our favorites. So we just pushed you right to the front of the line.
I'm honored by you guys doing that, but you guys have had on some incredible guests, and I'm so thankful to be back on with you guys again, because you and I, let's see, we've done this twice before, and we just had a blast.
I know.
So,
a lot of fun.
Who knows what's going to come up this time? Because there's no aviation news going on at all in the world.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Oh, well, aviation, UFOs, Tic Tacs, balloons, whatever you want to call it. In fact, here's that balloon over Hollywood again. Look at that.
Tony is obsessed with that photo, I swear.
Well,
hey, Mark, I do have one important question for you. So you said your login worked after getting out in 2007.
Yeah.
So that's 16 years. How did you remember your password that long? Tell us the truth. Did you have to reset?
Oh, it's easy. Forgot password.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do have.
I just made it, Tony. I made it something real easy that I could remember. Okay, I'm 65 years old now, so I need help. All the adult supervision that I can get. Just ask my wife; she will tell you that. Okay.
I'm just gonna guess your password right now. It's tanker gas 123, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Sluggo Sands.
Sluggo Sands. Speaking of Sluggo Sands,
we were do with airplanes.
We were. I got to tell you, Mark, it's kind of funny. Aaron and I were working together today because the three of us worked together, but Aaron and I were installing, and we were actually texting about you coming on tonight, and I was working right in front of a window, and within seconds of us texting, I got to show you that here's on my phone that flew over right as we were talking about you coming on tonight.
What time was that?
That was today at 12:48 p.m.
Yeah, 12:48.
I jumped into flight with all the stuff going on. I jumped into FlightAware, Ryan, just to see what's going on around the United States. And I saw a tanker, Utah 5-1, take off out of Salt Lake about that time. So
Oh, nice.
isn't that interesting?
Oh,
So,
yeah, that is interesting.
but I saw it come in and land too, and I'm
Yeah.
missing the fly,
That's great.
Before we get too far into this, one thing I want to do first off, Aid Carver, it's 2 a.m. It's RampCheck time. All
That's
right.
right. All the way from the UK. Wasn't it the UK? Right. It was, right?
Yep.
Hey,
thanks
just a shout out to you, Aid Carver. Thank you for coming on and staying up this late to be on the show, to listen to a knuckle dragging tanker guy tell all of his stories. I really appreciate Aid. Thank you for being here.
I'm looking forward to it.
So I wanted to say really quick, we really didn't do a proper introduction because we know each other. We've hung out. Like
I know. It's like we all just met at the restaurant and we're just like starting to shoot the shit right away, which is what we love to do.
Exactly. So I just want to share with you guys really quick Mark's website, and it's markhasara.com. And you go there, and this is a perfect introduction. Pilot, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and podcast host.
Yes.
Mark has done a lot in the military and his post-military career as well. And I know that we've had you on before, of course, Mark. But for people that haven't heard the audio version of the podcast before, would you just start and kind of just give us a little background, going back to kind of what got us into aviation, the same thing, being at the airport, watching the 707s take off and land?
Yeah, and that's a great lead into what we'll talk about tonight too. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 5 years old. My grandmother and grandfather lived on West Ellis Avenue, about 1.7 miles from the ends of the runways at Los Angeles International Airport.
Wow. Good old LAX.
We would go to Randy's Donuts, which is still there. And for those of you who are trying to figure out what Randy's Donuts is, the second Iron Man movie, Tony Stark is sitting in the donut.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Awesome.
The building.
That place has been there since
That's
1953. Right. So we would go, my grandfather would take my older sister, me, and my younger brother. We'd go get donuts at Randy's Donuts. And at that time, there wasn't any fences, okay? There's like, it literally went like open field and jackrabbits, Aviation Boulevard, fence, runway. And so
had the jet engine been developed by this time?
And see, that's the really cool thing, Aaron, is 707s DC-8s were brand new.
Wow, that's
nice.
cool. That's amazing.
So sitting on Aviation Boulevard on the south two runways, the airplanes are coming over your head 100 to 150 feet. And you could actually feel them going to ground effect over the top of you because you could feel that pressure down on you, okay?
Yeah.
And that's when I said, why work for a living when I can do this?
Yeah, right.
Definitely, yeah.
And ever since, even when I was a little kid, I dreamt of flying 707s. Wanted to go into the Air Force. And I basically lived my childhood dream flying KC-135 707s all over the world. As I tell all my wife's friends, passing gas for a living. Okay. And it was a wonderful career. And my career in the Air Force was very non-traditional, shall we say, because I'm a veteran of 4 wars.
Wow.
I have 10 catapult assisted takeoffs, 10 arrested landings on 8 aircraft carriers. I was on the initial cadre that created the KC-135 division of the United States Air Force Weapons School. Okay. Worst 4 years of my career. Nobody wanted us. Okay. Got to teach at National Defense University, campaign planning, was the chief of the air fueling control team for operations over Afghanistan in 2002, and then the Shock and Awe campaign in 2003. And to give all your listeners a sense of how much gas we're talking, during the 26 days of the Shock and Awe campaign, my team transferred 417,123,000 pounds of jet fuel into other airplanes.
Wow.
That's
That's a huge number, and I realize that's a huge number.
States.
So let me put that into human terms for you, okay? That amount of gas would allow a Ford F-150 truck to make 2,685 round trips to the moon, or 7 round trips to the sun.
Wow.
And we did that in 26 days, okay?
Wow.
And
That's
and
incredible.
all of you that have been watching this balloon shoot down and whatever these asteroids or whatever you want to call them, tankers have always been involved in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They
All of
really
these situations.
have. Yeah.
And our motto is nobody kicks ass without tanker gas. Nobody. That's the opening line of my book, Tanker Pilot, which came out in 2017. And you can find it on Amazon. It's in all 4 formats, hardback, softback, electronic, and audible. And the really cool thing is, you've seen some of my pictures. You guys have seen some of the pictures. I kept my camera with me everywhere I went for 24 and a half years and got some spectacular photos.
Yeah. We're all grateful for that. That's for sure.
Speaking of some of those spectacular photos,
Yeah.
they're one of my favorites.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Okay, so Ryan, you want the backstory of that?
I would love the back. One of the reasons I was so
jump ahead, but yeah, go ahead.
I was so excited to have you on, Marcus, because I could just if you find me going like this, it's because I'm just picturing being in your shoes in that position. So yes, I love the stories.
Put that picture back up. Put that picture back up, and I'll talk to it while I'm okay. So one of the great things about tankers is we had tanker task forces set up all over the world. In Europe, one in Iceland, there was one in Spain, there was one in Anderson Air Force Base in Guam.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for me, very early in my career, I got to go to Guam twice as a co-pilot. One on the very first trip, we got to go to Osan, Korea. And what we found out was Osan, Korea's 51st Wing was having their ORI, their Operational Readiness Inspection. And this is their truly go to war, are you ready to go to war kind of test. And they had F4s, as you can see. They had, this is the 36th Tactical Fighter Squadron, the Flying Fiends. And their F4s were painted in the Hill Gray scheme. They did Maverick, and it's coming up to get gas during this ORI. Now, you can see it's got the ACMI pod on one side. It's got the Maverick triple launcher on the other. They very rarely use that triple launcher, okay? Because 3 Maverick missiles and that launcher is a lot of drag on the airplane, okay?
Sure.
It's really good if you're fighting at the airfield fence, in other words, okay? And the really cool thing about these F4s is they had the shark mouths on them from the Vietnam War. That was a tradition for all of the F4s in PACAF.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so Tony, go to the next one.
Oh,
the next Phantom picture. Okay, that was taken during Desert Shield in 1990, about November of 1990.
Okay.
There was an air refueling anchor area that was called Gopher, which was right up against the border of Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. These are from the 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron out of Spangdahlem, Germany. And you can see it's carrying live AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missiles. Those are made for hunting SAM radars.
And that was the Wild Weasel roll, right?
These are the Wild Weasels.
Yeah.
These are the Wild Weasels. Okay. And the F4 had, it's called the APR 47 system, which was really a good system because all of the sensors on the F4 talk to the missiles, and you could actually send into the missile, okay, this is the one I want you to take out. And what's really cool about the F4G Wild Weasels is the first night of Desert Storm, I refueled the very first wild weasel package going into Baghdad. I was leading a cell of tankers. We were tuna 6'4", 6'5", and 6'6", and
Tuna,
all of the wild weasels were named after beer.
Beer. Yep.
We had Iowa fueled Coors. Number 2 refueled Michelob, and number 3 was refueling Lone Star. And each one of the flights had an EF-111 Spark Vark with them too.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I've actually met a lot of these guys now over the years. Getting ready to write my book, I reached out to the Wild Weasel Society and got a hold of the mission commander for that night. His name is Colonel George John Boy Walton, and he is a great American, and he and I still keep in touch. As a matter of fact, I was texting him this morning. Lives out on the East Coast. He got to watch the intercept actually from where he lives. He lives in South Carolina.
Oh, well, there you go.
Nice.
And think about this. Here it is 23 years later, and I got to actually talk to every crew member of Coors Flight. Coors 3-1 was John Boy and his backseater, Bud Redmond. Course 3-2, 3-3, 3-4. Haven't reached out to the EF-111 folks yet. Haven't found them yet, but I'm working on that. But that was a great airplane, but man, did it suck down gas.
Yeah, I bet. Mark, when I found out that you were going to join us again, or that you were dumb enough to join us again on the podcast, I'm just kidding.
My honor to be here, brother.
No, we're so honored to have you here. But I went back and started listening to the audiobook. And of course, I'm going to put a picture of the book up here right now. If you guys don't have it, it's called Taker Pilot Lessons from the Cockpit by that guy in the bottom left corner. And it was so cool when you started mentioning this, because I'm thinking, you think back on, the Gulf Wars and, what was going on back then, but you don't remember that F-14s, F-4s, F-111s, Spark Varks, the
Prowlers, intruders,
Prowlers, yep.
A6s, A7s. And it's just, that's like all my favorite era of military planes, and it just kind of brings it all back. And
Tony, it's my favorite era of airplanes too. And maybe that's because, I'm refueling them. I don't know, but I'm a typical airplane nerd. Okay. Built plastic model airplanes when I was 4 or 5 years old. I still have a closet. My closet back here is still full of them. And
nice.
Oh, wait a minute. There's a great story behind this picture too. We'll come back to in just a second.
Okay. All right. I'll save it for later.
Dude, if you keep throwing pictures up, man, we're going to be here all night.
Okay.
But those were the airplanes of the Cold War.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the airplanes that were built to take on the Russians and, the big Russian bear. And I find it fascinating that there's all this talk about, war with Russia, war with China now. And I still think back to these airplanes that we flew and think about the KC-135. It's as old as I am.
It is old.
Right?
We had 2 airplanes on the ramp at Fairchild that came off the assembly line 2 months before I did.
Oh, wow.
And because I remember looking in the 781, which is the maintenance manual, and I'm like going, whoa, this is a 57 model. And so we had 2 57 models on the ramp at Fairchild Air Force Base that came off in March of 1957. I came off the assembly line in May of 1957.
Wow.
And
That's
here's a really funny story about this. In 2016, we took my youngest son out of school, and he was 15, because he could still go on AMC flights.
Mm-hmm.
He was still underage. So we homeschooled him in Europe for 80 days in 10 countries.
Oh, wow.
Just taking the train, going around everywhere. Okay. Because once you get there, it's really quite easy to move around, and you can find places for $30 a night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you get fresh bread, Ade Carver, he knows about fresh bread. You go to the market, you get the fresh bread, you get all the fresh vegetables. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful food experience, as you can imagine. Okay. And I remember we got to the ramp and we're getting on a tanker at Mildenhall to come back. And I started bouncing up and down in my chair and everything. I'm look at the tanker, look at the tanker. And my wife goes, the boy's done lost his mind.
Good for you for giving him that AVGEEK blood.
That's right.
But here's the crazy thing about it. The tail number was what I saw, 8874. 25 years before, when I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, that was my airplane and it had my name on it. I was going home on the tanker that, when I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, had my name on it, 8874. And of course,
that's awesome.
And of course, my wife goes, yeah, okay, whatever. But I remember showing the pilots. I had a picture of it on the ramp in Okinawa, and I went up and I showed the pilots. I said, look, I'm very interested in this jet.
Yeah.
And I kind of swallowed a little hard telling them this story. This was my airplane when I was a captain at Okinawa flying with the 909th. And I showed him the picture. And he says, well, Colonel, the 781 form is right there on the desk. Why don't you take a look and look at the history? And I thought, that's so cool. That's a great idea. So I sat down at the desk, where the boom sits, and I went through the 781. It had over 26,000 hours and 6,000 landings during its time period, during its life. And it was just cool sitting at this desk, going through this maintenance manual and going, part of my life was spent in this airplane that had my name on it.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
That is incredible.
You said you were in Okinawa when that was your airplane. So was that during the time that you talk about in your book where Kim Jong-un or whatever wanted to bury his dad in Seoul?
Yes.
And okay.
Yeah.
So you guys got to read this book if you haven't read it yet. It's amazing.
It is amazing. The stories.
It's nice to put the dates together with the timeline. So it's pretty cool.
That was the summer. I think he died in July of 1994. And very few people know that there was a mini air campaign going on over South Korea at that time period. We even brought in the F-117s. The F-117s were at Kunsan during that time period. Okay. And for 2 weeks, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock, 3 tankers, the AWACS, the rivet joint, and 14 F-15s would take off in unison.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And I was on the very first Monday flight. I wasn't flying it, but I was on the very first Monday flight. And all the F-15s were tucked up underneath us so that we presented only one radar picture. All right. And you know what's funny? I still remember the young captain that was the mission commander. He was a weapons school graduate. His name was Weeby Young. And I remember them, being tucked up underneath us and everything. And you look out because it presents this small radar picture. Not that a tanker has a small radar picture, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
But they don't know that there's 4 more F-15s underneath us as we came charging up the center of South Korea. And as we got to our explosion point, as we called it, okay, all of the F-15s that were on, 4 on me, 4 on the one behind me, 4 on the one behind me, exploded and went up to 32,000 feet, turned their radars on, and were looking into North Korea. And I'll never forget this radio call. It was the only radio call that we had made on the way up there. And it was Weeby's voice going, "Blowns, push purple 1 now," which was their air-to-air freak. And then they just went boom like this. And when we got back, my good buddy Weeby and Taz told us that every radar in the lower 1/3 of North Korea turned on at the same time. while the rivet joint was there just turning along the border, got every stinking piece of electronic intelligence.
Wow.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
And we came home and we went, well, that was fun. You know?
Yeah.
And then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we did the same thing, except for the rivet joint didn't go. They had, as you know, at Osan, Korea is one of the deployment locations for the U-2 spy plane, and the U-2 covered the night vol. But they had the same thing, you know, going up there and capping in 3 lanes across South Korea. And it was just the Americans' way of showing, if you try and bury your dad in Seoul, it's going to come at a great cost.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
2 days later, we had Strike Eagles at Gwangju, and I think the same night the F-117s came in. And interesting, the following week I was flying a mission with the F-117s, and we were in R80, which is one of the very northern whiskey areas. They call them whiskey areas. It's kind of like our playpen. And this is the very northern one over the Yellow Sea. So it's on the west side of South Korea. And the F-117s, whenever they got gas, they always came off and went north, went to the right. And we always went, I wonder where they're going. And then 35 minutes later, they'd show back up for some more gas, and then they would leave to the right again.
Oh my goodness! Are there any pictures of you refueling an F-117 that you sent us?
No, I don't.
Okay.
You know, I could probably find some. I could probably even find some video too.
I was just curious.
And I'll tell all your listeners, the first time you refueled an F-117, it was surreal. And the airplanes were still classified at the time when they came over to the Gulf for the first Gulf War. And I got read into the program. The unclassified nickname was called Busy Spartan. And I'm not telling you guys anything that's going to get me in trouble. It's actually in my officer proficiency report. So that's what it was called. And how you got qualified for this was you did an over the shoulder where you're watching another crew refuel the F-117s. Major John Smallwood had been at Pease when I was there, and now is at Plattsburgh. And he was the IP on board that was watching everything. And I remember sitting in the jump seat next to him, and he reached over and he tapped me on the knee like this, you know, and then he just goes like this. And I look out there, and there was actually a full moon up that night, and it was silhouetting this F-117, and I could see every movement of the pilot in the cockpit. Wow. And I just went, oh, this is so cool. And I just watched it for a while, and you're just mesmerized by this.
Yeah.
And then John says, hey, you need to go back to the back and take a look from the back. And I said, okay. Well, we had given them their pre-strike gas. They went off and did this exercise where they simulated bombing something. And 35 minutes later, they came back. And so I could hear them on the way back on the radio. They were calling, you know, like 20 miles out. And I went back and I laid down on the couch next to my boom operator, Mikey Densmore. And we have a floodlight on top of the tail of the tanker, which of course shines down on everybody that comes up underneath us.
Yeah.
All I saw coming was a flashing red and green light. Boom, boom.
That's so cool.
Boom, boom, like this. The airplane comes up under the floodlight, and I see the air refueling door roll over like this.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I just go, oh, that's so cool. All right. And Mikey Densmore, my boom operator, pushes the intercom button. He goes, this is the cat's ass. This is the cat's ass, screaming it through the airplane. Okay. And it really was, because it was just one of those surreal moments where you see this airplane, this new technology,
Yeah.
And you see the air refueling door just roll over like this. And of course, when they were done, it would roll back over, and then the airplane would go to one of the wings, and then it would leave. And I'll never forget that night, because you always keep in your mind and in your head those events that were truly inspirational, motivational, whatever you want to call it. And that was one of them. The first night that I refueled F-117s was a night that I'll never forget. Particularly we're a 3-ship cell. We're just watching what's going on. And then 2 nights later, I was in the seat with John Smallwood sitting in the jump seat, you know, grading me how I was doing. And it was the same thing. You know, do you see him come up? We were in a turn. Do you see him come up like this? Oh, the other crazy thing was we were flying over the city. The anchor area, which is a left-hand racetrack pattern, was over the town of Khamis Mashat, down in southern Saudi Arabia, where the F-117s were. And so on the southbound leg, we would fly right over the top of Khamis. And so now you've got this arrowhead on the boom that is now highlighted with the lights of Khamis underneath it. And you just see this black arrowhead shape, and you can see some of the details of it and everything like that. And you see the air refueling door over and the boom in it and everything. And you're just like going, yeah, this is why I fly.
Yeah.
This is why I fly.
So you obviously didn't send us any video of that, but I've got a video queued up of one of the night refueling missions that you did. This was of an F-16. They were only the F-117s were only exclusively flying at night at this time, right?
That's what we call them, the cockroach. They're black and they only come out at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I show this video, Mark? Because I would imagine refueling the 117 kind of looked like this, maybe.
It did. Okay, so the videos are not mine, but these are from the Defense Visual Information. And pause it right there.
Okay. Oh, let's see if I can pause it. There we go. Let me back up.
Yeah, back up just a little bit.
Okay, let's see here.
And Tony, there's a reason I want to do that, because I want to talk about right there is good. Right there is perfect. Look at how the airplane's loaded.
Yeah.
So moving from right to left, you've got an AIM-120 AMRAAM on the wing. Then inboard, you have what's called the brand new small diameter bombs. And they're 250-pound bombs, but they're extremely accurate. And you can toss these things a long way because it has what's called a box wing. It actually has wings. Okay. Probably has an ECM pod on the center line, of course, which we can't see. And then you see it's got what's called a bomb release unit or bomb rack carrying 2 500-pound baby JDAMs, which are also extremely accurate. And then you see an AMRAAM. Notice it's not carrying any heat-seeking missiles like Sidewinder, AIM-9 Mikes, or AIM-9X.
Right.
Probably because the threat's low wherever this was taken. I did not take these videos. Again, these all came from the Defense Visual Information. But this is what it looks like at night when you're laying in the boom pod, just watching what's going on, and of course listening over the radio too. So go ahead.
Incredible.
I can't imagine how cool. I mean, this looks cool, but imagine seeing an F-117 like that.
Well, and like I said, Ryan,
painted.
watching that door roll over like that, it just like, you know, the hair on the back of my neck just stood up. It's like, oh my gosh. And then to have my boom operator, Mikey Densmore, this is the cat's ass. This is the cat's ass. He kept saying that every time he touched one of these things with the boom.
That's so funny.
Now, this is probably one of the coolest airplanes there is. This is an AC-130 gunship. This is an AC-130J.
Wow, that's cool.
And we refuel these down low. And you can see it's got all kinds of antennas. And the tanker guy just said, okay, we're coming to the left. We're down low doing these guys, okay? Because they are so full of ammunition and stuff that they can't get up very high.
Yeah, and drag too.
Yeah, and drag and everything too, because they got the guns pointing out and stuff like, you know. But as if we needed to
Wow.
make, as if, and see the IR sensor on the nose just went under the
Yep.
nose.
Mhm.
It's all right there, and
Wow.
you can hear the guys talking back and forth. We normally don't talk a whole lot when we're doing the AC-130s and the MC-130s
Yeah.
because we show up on altitude, on time, at the rendezvous point, and just go from there. But
So
as
when
if
you,
the AC-130 wasn't lethal enough,
Yeah.
they've now put small diameter bombs on it.
Oh,
It will carry
wow.
small diameter bombs out on the wing stations.
oh really?
Now, Mark, do you think that the Air Force did that because they're kind of projecting ahead? They're going to have some distance between the enemy and the aircraft in the future, and China, so to speak.
Yes.
Because I mean, some of these assets, these AC-130s, and
Mhm.
they're awesome aircraft and what they can do. But against an adversary like China, I mean, this isn't like fighting in Afghanistan or Iraq.
No,
I
it's
mean,
not.
they're going to have lots of stuff pointed at them that could take them down just as easy.
And you make a great point, Aaron, because we only send that airplane into what we would call a benign environment, or unless we have massive amounts of air superiority.
Yeah.
And in a China fight, let's just use the scenario that they're coming across the Formosa Straits. That airplane would be something that we would use much later on.
Yeah.
Because we would want to use low observables, as we call them. You call them stealth. We call them low observables, like the F-17, like the F-22, like the F-35.
Right.
Because their low observables would also be coming at us.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I'll tell you something. When my last assignment was in operational test and evaluation, and one of the things that a commander told us was, I have a capability gap here. Is there any way we can overcome this? And it was how to sink ships with GPS guided weapons. And we figured it out. It was the most amazing thing. But typical military, the Air Force had its program and the Navy had its program. All right. And being a joint warfighter like I am, when I got the package for this thing, okay, it was called Affordable Moving Surface Target Engagement, AMSTE was the Air Force name for the program. I looked at the guys and I said, have you talked to the Navy? Well, of course not. And it's not because of them. It's just because they didn't understand, like I did, being a joint warfighter, that they had people that were probably trying to figure out this very same thing. And so I talked to one of my Navy buds and I said, hey, is there a group in the Navy that does nothing but look at surface warfare problems? He goes, oh yeah, that would be SWEDG, Surface Warfare Development Group down at Coronado Island. I said, you had a name and a number? He goes, yeah, here, this is one of my buds. I said, great. Called him on the phone. I said, look, you don't know me from Adam. I'm an Air Force tanker guy. I'm at our Operational Test and Evaluation Center. I want to come talk to you about an initiative that we are working on that I'd be willing to bet you are too. He says, well, can you tell me what it is? I said, I can't on this phone, but it's surface targets. And he goes, oh, I know what you're talking about. And so I went down there and spent about 3 hours with the Surface Warfare Development Group, SWEDG. And sure enough, they had an initiative called Joint Surface Warfare. They weren't just looking at ships. They were looking at tanks, armies, vehicles, everything. How can we hit a moving target with some of these GPS guided weapons like small diameter bomb, GBU-38, which is the 500-pound bomb? The 2,000-pounder just is too massive. It's a big bomb. But anyway, and we worked it out. And they did a test and on a decommissioned ship, and a B-52 dropped 3 GBU-31 2,000-pound bombs that hit 4 amidship and aft, and the ship sank in 8 minutes.
Wow. Well, that would
Nice.
explain why they're keeping the buff around another 50 years.
Yes.
Well, and see, they have a new weapon now that all of you have heard of, the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile. I think it's AGM-158. If you haven't, here's what it is. It's a new low observable missile, and it has been used in combat. Remember when the B-1s were launched against the Syrian chemical weapons facilities? The B-1s were carrying this, as we call it, JASM missile. There is also a ship version of it called LRASM, long range air to surface anti-ship missile, which is the same thing, but it's very smart. And if your listeners, I'm not going to go into all the particulars about it. If your listeners go out and look up AGM 158, it'll come right up. Yeah.
So here's one right here. That's
Yeah.
the JASM.
Yeah.
Dang.
And see, there's a ship version of it too. And very successful during the strikes. It's got like 1,000-pound warhead. And I think, if I remember right, they dropped like 19 of them from 2 B-1s that went after this one research facility on the edge of Damascus. So there's 19 1,000-pound warheads coming at the place. It just leveled the place, okay?
I was going to say, you think they got it?
I know, yeah. Use enough dynamite there, Butch? But those are the kinds of things that we have created that, and everybody always says, you know, you United States guys, you always solve every problem with technology. Well, that's because we're good at it.
Yeah.
But there's some cases where, you know, that technology has to be used with human intelligence and other intelligence forms too, that to find out, okay, where do we really need to send this this message, as we call it, to some particular location. And
what did you call it in your book, or maybe it was one of our past podcasts? Is depending on what you're talking about, it's you know, 100,000 pounds or 200,000 pounds of attitude adjustment.
Yeah, that's what we called the nuclear bombs. The FB-11s, when my first base of assignment.
That's funny.
We called it 2.5 megatons of thermonuclear attitude adjustment. And the FB-111s were carrying short-range attack missiles as well as B-61 bombs. And the bombs, we called them dial-a-yield. You could actually dial the yield up and down depending on the target. But
oh my gosh!
Wow,
that was a long time ago, man. Holy
so
shit.
I know that there's you know, current event subjects that we wanted to discuss with you. But before we go on to that, Sluggo, I wanted to ask you. You had mentioned that. You know, when we were talking about China and how, you know, we would want to throw our low observables first, you know, at China or whatever. And then you said, of course, they'd be sending theirs at us. And China has the what is it, the J-20, the Mighty Dragon, which basically looks like, you know, an F-22 and an F-35 had a baby, pretty much is what it looks like from all the stolen.
That's a really good analogy too. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
But so I have a hard time. Okay, so a stealth aircraft. Let's take the F-22 Raptor for instance. Okay, I mean, you can even talk about the F-35, I guess. You know, but I mean, it's much more than the way the aircraft looks. I mean, the sensors, the fusion, like the sensor fusion, the engine, the capabilities that are so classified, most people don't know about them. I have a hard time thinking that China and even Russia with their Su-57 has that type of tech that we've been able to develop. So yeah, they may be 5th generation fighters, you know, they may have upgraded technologies, but I honestly have a hard time believing that they're as badass as what we've got.
Well, let me add this too, Aaron, that you're saying, you say they're 5th and 6th generation fighters. They're Russia and China's 5th and 6th generation fighters.
I know, and I keep whenever I read an article, it's like, you hear about the F-22 or the F-35, and then, whoever's writing the article is usually like, well, China has their mighty dragon, and, and the Felon, and Russia. And it's just like, but come on, they may look awesome and stealthy and wicked, but are they really? What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
So how many Felons are there? Do you know?
Oh gosh, they don't even have a full squadron.
Number. Yeah, it's a really low number.
Used.
You know what? You know what's really interesting? It has the most. It's got the weirdest engine whine.
Yeah, it does.
Go
when
listen.
You
to
listen to videos.
Really strange engine noise that it makes. Engine sound that it makes. Here's my thoughts on that. And Aaron, you ask a great question. Because a lot of people are asking that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we have to send up an F-22 against a balloon?
Yeah, I said that last podcast.
Yeah, why an F-22 against a balloon? And many Air Force chiefs of staff ago, we had a guy by the name of John Jumper, and he was truly a visionary guy. And one of the things that he really wanted to do was to shorten what we called the kill chain.
Mm-hmm.
That when we found a target, we could put either kinetic or non-kinetic weapons on it quickly. And the F-22 is a massive sensor.
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen to the audio that somebody got of them talking to Huntress, it's really fascinating. It's in my episode that I posted last night, where you can hear these guys talking back and forth. He talks about his sensors. It's not just the radar in the nose, but it's other things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes the F-35 and the F-22 such good platforms, is their ability to sense things. And if you can sense it, then you can put warheads on foreheads.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that one of the problems that the Chinese have, one of the things they've not been able to steal from us, is our engine technology, particularly engine technology inside the core of the engine. They have some problems with their engines. Okay. And the Russians have historically had engine issues too. Some of them have been really good, some of them not so good. Anybody that has read anything about the MiG-25 knows that if it goes up and goes Mach 2.8, they got to change the engine out of the airplane when it gets on the ground. Not so with American engines. I've heard that. Not so with American engines. And when you listen to, there's a lot of people, of course, taking video from the ground of the intercept of the balloon. And the one I chose to use on my podcast, you can hear this lady go, I heard the boom. I heard the boom. And in the audio of Huntress, Frank 01, 02, Eagle 11, Eagle 12 talking game plan, he says, I'm going to go Mach 1.3. I'm going to release this thing at Mach 3, 50,000 feet, AIM-9X.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my friends are like going, dude, bullets. I mean, we still have bullets, right? But you have to remember the restrictions that we have on us above 50,000 feet are you have to be in a spacesuit. You have to be in a full pressure suit like SR-71 and U-2.
Mm-hmm.
So to avoid having to do that, I think they chose the F-22 because that's where it spends a lot of its time, at higher altitudes, because of its sensors. Why did they use AIM-9X? When I was at Operational Test and Evaluation Center, one of my programs was AIM-9X. And again, I mentioned this in my episode last night. It's an incredible missile. And the Navy Operational Test and Evaluation Center is back at Norfolk, near Oceana, where I had just moved from. So I called the Navy program manager and I said, hey, can you get us some F-18 Super Hornet sim time and let me play with these things? He goes, yeah, sure. And so for an hour.
Sure, why not? What the hell?
Why not? Yeah. And what was really cool was the instructor, who was a retired F-14 guy. I can't remember his name or his call sign. He had a really, really interesting background. I wish I could find him again. He said, I'll just give you scenarios. I said, okay, fine. And the AIM-9X was built specifically for certain scenarios. It's not a traditional heat-seeking missile. It is an imaging infrared missile, more like the imaging infrared seeker or TV on the Maverick than it is the cooled heat-seeking source, although it'll do that.
Yeah.
But we fired one. We said, well, it'll hit all these targets. Will it hit a truck? And we went, let's find out. So we got some old beater truck. We towed it on, I don't know, 600-700 feet of cable behind another truck going 35 miles an hour. And that missile came off of the F-15 and skewered that truck.
Wow.
AIM-9 Mike probably couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And the video that we got back from the missile on some of its shots were, as it got closer to the F-4, you could make out the panel lines of the panels on the F-4. And as it got closer, you could actually see rivets.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
From the actual missile?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Excuse me. They were it was data linking the thing back. And you have to remember too, the missile has thrust vectoring paddles. So it's highly maneuverable.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good missile.
Yeah.
Smaller warhead than the
basically
AIM-120s, you know.
And with that thrust vectoring, you know, I mean, you could presumably a pilot could look over, you know, his or her right shoulder, launch the missile, and the missile will track right over to what they're looking at with the AIM-9X.
Yes, I talk about that. We actually did that. Because with the joint helmet mounted cueing system on, you've got the target designator box in front of the right eye of the pilot. Okay. And he or she can look down at targets and pick them out. The very first units to use joint helmet mounted cueing system, JHEMICs, or we call it the lid, in combat was VFA 14 top hatters and VFA 41 black aces. They were coming into the Gulf at the very end of the shock and awe campaign to relieve the Lincoln, who had been out for almost 10 months. And they were wearing those helmets. The Lincoln Squadron VFA 115, I don't think had joint helmet mounted cueing system. I'd have to go back and look at that. But I know 14 and 41 both did. And so, you know, here you can just look down at a row of tanks and go, okay, 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4, 5 potato, 6 potato, 7 potato more, you know. And the cool thing is, once it gets in your system, I can send my wingman, okay, you take the first 3, I'll take the last 3, and not even talk, because it's all done through the helmet. And of course, the F-35, its helmet has the night vision system built into the helmet. And the company I used to work for, Rockwell Collins, now Collins Aerospace, makes both of them. And we had a really cool demonstrator that we used for the joint helmet mounted cueing system. And you would sit in this chair and we put Epcot Center from Disney World underneath you in the helmet.
Nice.
Okay. And so you could sit there and look at everything, you know, and of course, you know, you got the big Epcot dome and everything, and you could put the helmet on that and smash the auto acquisition button, and now that's a target. Okay. And it was just to show you that, you know, this is how this helmet works. And the F-35 helmet, you can actually look through the airplane because it's got cameras around the airplane.
Yeah, all over.
And there's a really cool story about that helmet. The first time I think they went to Red Flag, the strike package lead was this old crusty lieutenant colonel squadron commander, and there was a new first lieutenant, not a whole lot of hours in the F-35, but enough, you know, to fly it at a Red Flag exercise.
Yeah.
And he told the old crusty lieutenant colonel, "Hey, you're about to get tapped by some aggressors." And he's going, "No, no, 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 I'm not. No, I'm not." He goes, "Yes, sir. They're going to be there in about 30 seconds." And so two of his guys turned around and looked low, and sure enough, there they were. And the F-35 guy saw it all because of his sensor suite that he has in the airplane.
So you can just look 360 everywhere with the cameras on that thing.
Exactly,
Oh,
right.
wow.
So like you can drop a bomb and you can kind of go like this and watch the bomb hit the
Just
target
watch it.
through the airplane.
I didn't get a chance to obviously see that capability, but Aaron and I did get to try on one of those helmets. Remember that, Aaron?
Fast up at Hill Air Force Base.
And most comfortable helmet I've ever tried on, that's for sure. But never got to see like the full capability of it. But just to hear that you could just kind of look around and see it, that's totally cool.
And it's got all the same stuff in it too that the joint helmet mounted queuing system does. Plus, it's got the night vision system built in it too.
Dang.
So it was a very, very complicated helmet, and there was a lot of early teething problems with it, and a lot of things that we had to deal with trying to get that technology to work. But apparently, it's working really good now, and remember, you know, wherever you're looking, the sensors are looking. And if you slave the or tie the seeker heads of the missiles to the helmet, they're looking in the same place too.
Wow.
So when you're fighting a dogfight, and this is one of the things we did in the F-18 Super Hornet sim with Biscuit in the back seat. He was the Navy Wizzo. We were like this in a circle fight. All right. And so I could look across the circle at the guy, put the TD box on him, press the acquisition button, 1 potato, 2 potato, locked him up. And then I saw the diamond of the AIM-9X seeker over the top of him, which means, okay, it's looking there now too. And the 1 potato, 2 potato was to let the missile kind of settle. And then I fired it and it came off the rail, went, you know, and did kind of a 90 right like this, 90 left and hit him.
That's nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And you know, some people may be thinking, you know, hey, you're kind of letting the cat out of the bag here. You know what? A lot of these videos are on YouTube now. I was really surprised that some of these are actually on YouTube now. Some of these capabilities. And I was working on the Block 1 missiles. There's a Block 2 version that they're using now that's even got more capabilities, which I can't get into, but we have some pretty incredible technology that we use to find, fix, and finish people that are going to do us harm. And, and I always ask myself, you know, why do people want to mess with us?
Yeah.
You know, why do people want to mess with us?
They're jealous.
One of the things that I mentioned in the podcast last night was I want all of your listeners to go look this up and download it. It's called Unrestricted Warfare. It was written by 2 Chinese Air Force colonels in 1999. And if you really want to understand how the Chinese are thinking, go read that book, because they come up with 15 modalities of war. They knew in 1999 that they could not take on a technologically advanced adversary like the United States, possibly Russia. You had to have other ways to do it. And so they talk about gang warfare, law warfare. They talk about social warfare, economic warfare. And one of the things it says in the book, Economic Warfare, hey, if the bank president isn't doing what you want, kill him.
Yeah.
They're basically saying there are no rules in warfare that we associate with the Geneva Convention anymore. And I have a slide that I used to teach from. I'll send it to you guys so that you can put it on your web page or website somewhere. That's got all the 15 modalities on it. And I speak about them again in the podcast episode that I posted last night and go through them all. So if you really want to understand some of these things that are going on around us, where there's divisiveness in the United States. Class warfare is one of them. Economic warfare. The upper 1% doesn't pay their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And the poor guy is getting left behind, and things like that. That's exactly out of this unrestricted warfare book manual.
Right.
Hey, I see a question up here.
We have a question.
Dutch
Let's
roll.
see.
Oh, this is a
Who we
really
got?
good question too.
Yes.
All right. Oh,
Spiny
yeah.
Side Up has a great question. Okay.
Okay. Let me put that up there. Here we go.
Here we
Okay.
go.
What he's asking folks is referencing the accident in May 3rd of 2013, where a tanker lost control. Can you explain what Dutch roll is and what caused it? So
This was over in Europe, right?
yeah, this is the one that went down in like Kyrgyzstan or something like that. Okay. Hang on, let me adjust here a little quick. Spinny Side Up, that's a great question. And it's something that we used to practice in the simulator, not in the airplane. And what happens is when you have swept wing airplanes, it's easy for the airplane to go out of control, where it's going like this and like this and like this. And it has to do with yaw. And inside the R model tanker, because the engines produce so much thrust, they had to put in a yaw damper that would automatically sense if one of the engines, I think it started kicking itself on at a 1500 RPM difference. 1500 RPM when the engines are spinning at 60,000 RPM is nothing. And this thing would automatically kick the rudder over, sensing which way the nose was going so that the airplane would stay centered. And what happened was, because of the swept wing dynamics of the KC-135, they got into a Dutch roll. So what's happening is the airplane's going this way, going this way, going this way, kind of like this, okay? And they had taken out of the training syllabus how to fight that. And what happened was the crew over-G'd the rudder and it broke off. So the whole tail of the airplane came off because they found it a couple miles from the main wreckage, okay? And so now it doesn't have the fin, and now, the airplane's just yawing everywhere. And so the airplane actually broke up, I think, in the air, if I remember right, and came down in Kyrgyzstan, all right?
This was a KC-135?
Yeah, it was a KC-135, our model. It was from Fairchild.
Oh, that's right.
So it got into this Dutch roll, and we had not trained to that anymore, thinking, hey, it's going to take that out. And what had happened is they had a portion of the yaw damper, if I remember right, broke or went bad or something.
It was known or something. That's right.
Exactly. Okay. And so the crew got into that, and instead of using aileron, and what you do when you get in a Dutch roll, as the airplane's wing is coming up like this, you go into the roll to negate it. All right. And you may have to do it 2 or 3 or 4 times, but it will subsequently come wings level. All right. And from what I understand, and I'd have to go back and read this again, Spinny Side Up, but they were using rudder to help them put the nose back in the right place, which is the last thing you want to do in this case. And the whole tail came off the airplane, and the airplane spun in and crashed and killed the 3 people on it. That's a really good question, because a lot of swept wing airplanes have that issue, and they have systems on board that help negate that Dutch roll. And as soon as you take that system off, it'll make it worse. And I think and the boldface procedure was, for uncommanded yaw, is take the yaw damper off. And I think in this case, it made it worse. Again, I'm going to have to go back and read the crash report and exactly what happened, but I know the situation you're talking about. And of course, all the big airplanes now have that system in it too, that helps it get rid of that. So There's a really fascinating story behind this. And the Germans actually understood this problem during World War II. They had built a wind tunnel, and believe it or not, Boeing aerodynamic engineers were actually on the investigation team that went to their German research facility at Peenemünde. And they went there and got to talk to all the German aero engineers. And of course, they're talking airfoils because they're starting to fly jets.
Yeah.
And they've got straight wing jets. They've got jets with sweep and like the ME-262. The Arado bomber has a kind of a straight wing on it. And so they obviously asked, well, what have you learned from this? And they go, oh, well, let us show you. And they show them this wind tunnel. And they're like, wait, what? Wind tunnel? You guys have a wind tunnel? And of course, the Wright brothers had developed one on their own. And a lot of people had these things, but they had like 30,000 hours of test material testing airfoils for German Luftwaffe airplanes. So Boeing came back from that with an advantage over its competitors because they knew from all of the stuff that the Germans had learned and creating their own wind tunnel, kind of like the Germans, that the 35-degree wing sweep was the way to go. The B-52, KC-135, I think the Boeing B-47, guess what they all had? 35-degree wing sweep, okay? The DC-8 McDonnell Douglas, they didn't have that information. And if I remember right, the DC-8 has a 30-degree wing sweep by 35, which is why the 707 was faster.
Interesting.
Another great book that I would recommend to all of your listeners is called The Jet Makers. And it goes through how we transition from prop airplanes to jets because nobody wanted jet airliners. When the CEO of Boeing went to American Airlines, Pan Am, Delta, said, we're going to make a jet airliner. They all went, don't want it. Thanks. Because they drank so much gas.
Yeah.
And of course, as you know, it's, revenue mile per passenger. Okay. Well, if a jet engine is sucking down 5 times as much gas as a prop airplane, why would you do it? But they didn't understand that the Boeing 707 was actually going to be 5 times more. I think it was 5 or 8 times more efficient at carrying passengers than the DC-7s, DC-8 or DC-7s, the prop airplanes. Douglas owned the airline industry at the time. Everybody has seen DC-7s, DC-3s, DC-4s, everything. And that was what everybody used. That's what everybody flew on. And nobody wanted to do anything with jets. Juan Trippe, the president of Pan Am, wanted to kind of hedge his bets. He bought a handful of 707s and a handful of DC-8s, which nobody knows about. You always see Pan Am, they're always flying what? 707s.
707s, yeah.
He flew DC-8s for a while and then got rid of them and then started flying 707s.
Wow.
Delta and United, on the other hand, loved the DC-8.
Yep.
And when they finally put engines on the DC-8 that were fuel efficient, the CFM56 engines, it was a great ride. Okay. I actually got to fly across the Pacific on a DC-8 with CFM56 engines, and it was fabulous.
I remember flying to basic training, San Antonio, Texas, from Salt Lake City. It was my way back because I went through Dallas, and I flew back on a Delta Airlines DC-8. This was 1987, 88.
Yeah. We came home on leave from Okinawa in like the 94 timeframe. And they had different airlines that would fly what they called rotators through the Pacific. So somebody that was moving over there would hop on this jet with their family and go. And of course, we being on leave had the leave paperwork, and we got on one of these DC-8s in LA. Went from LA to Hawaii, Hawaii to Guam, Guam to Okinawa.
It's only a couple stops.
Yeah, I think we spent a couple days in Hawaii on the way home. I don't know why, I'm living in Okinawa. Why do I need to spend time on another island, right?
Right.
But everybody wants to go see Hawaii, and so we stayed a couple days there. My kids were all young at the time, but we went on this DC-8. Well, a couple days later, the DC-8 was doing the same run, and I couldn't believe it. It's got the stretched fuselage with the CFM56 engine, so it's really fuel efficient, can carry a lot of passengers, and there was maybe 30 people on the airplane. My kids had whole rows to themselves. We all had a whole rows to ourselves.
Wow.
And so we took off from Honolulu, went to Anderson Air Force Base in Guam. We landed at Anderson like in the middle of the night. The kids didn't even get up, and it was for passengers to get off, refuel the airplane, and then we went up to Okinawa and landed in Kadena and got off there. So, but go read the Jet Makers, because there's really a lot of fascinating things. How many of you guys know that the KC-135 came in third place in the original 1954 competition for tanker?
I remember you telling us this.
Yeah. It came in third. And the only reason that they got KC-135s is because Bill Allen, the CEO, knew that they had to have a jet tanker to refuel the B-52s, and he pushed the Dash 80 through and used $16 million of his own money, which back in the 50s was a like billions.
Yeah.
And built that airplane. And a Lockheed airplane called the L-193 actually won the competition. Looks kind of like the old Victor tanker, not Victor tankers, but VC-10 tankers is what it looked like. But they couldn't get off the drawing board. And Curtis LeMay just said, I'll just take the rest of these. Thanks.
Awesome. What a great story.
It really is.
Since we were talking about blowing stuff up earlier, can I show that blowing stuff up video you sent us?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to show this one right now, and I'm sure you can.
This is an island somewhere. You see the helicopter come off to the right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is a IR laser. This is an IR pointer. Okay. So unless you have on, goggles, you can't see that. And what they're doing is they're taking that IR pointer and they're pointing at the target. And it's some island they called Gilligan's Island, somewhere in Iraq. And a bunch of insurgents had taken it over, and they were fighting very ferociously. And so they called in helicopters. They weren't Apaches; they're little birds. They call them DAP. I can't remember what DAP stands for. Direct Action Penetrator, I think is what it stands for. And they came in with their miniguns and their rockets, and were softening up the island that those guys were taking fire from.
Wow.
And I will be the first to admit to anybody, the reason that we have air forces, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, even Coast Guard, is to help protect the guys and gals on the ground. That's really our job.
Right.
We talk about air superiority and shooting down balloons. What is the reason for air superiority? Air supremacy, air superiority, the reason that you get that is so that you can operate against an enemy adversary's army unimpeded by an air threat.
Yeah.
Right.
And once you have that, you can pretty much dictate what's going to happen on the battlefield. And you've seen, in Iraq and Afghanistan, we own the airspace. Now, true, we made some mistakes, and those were the strategy. Everybody has always said, what's our strategy? What's our exit strategy for leaving Afghanistan? All these things. And we spent 20 years there until finally we just pulled out, which I won't go into because I'm not going to get on my political soapbox tonight.
Yeah,
Right.
I know. That's a whole other
It really is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
But when you go back and you look at the United States Army and Marine Corps, they have not come under fire from an enemy airplane since 1951.
Wow.
Really?
Since
Crazy.
1951 in the Korean War. Because we've basically owned the sky over most of our battlefields. Now, I would say in the Vietnam War, we had some trouble because there was some new technology. We had never faced surface-to-air missiles before, and a whole new mission set developed out of hunting and killing surface-to-air missile sites, the wild weasels. But you see how we adapted to that, to where we can operate in some of these denied access places against surface-to-air missiles, whether from land or from sea, so that we can come in and help protect our guys and gals that are on the ground. That's really why we exist. And as you see from Afghanistan, Iraq, things that we're doing now, you know, the F-15E, when we went to war in Afghanistan, didn't even have close air support in its doctrine. They didn't even train to it.
Wow.
And now all of a sudden they're doing troops in contact with the F-15E. Great example is Takragar Mountain, the Battle of Roberts Ridge. I interviewed one of those guys on my podcast, Spliff Russell. And he said he and Panzer, his pilot, had never shot the gun at a ground target before. And now they're having to lay down bullets 80 meters from the good guys in combat.
Wow.
And fortunately, the pilot in Twister 5-1, Junior Short, had come from A-10s. And so he understood that. But you have to remember, the gun points 2 degrees up in the F-15s because it's made for air to air. So you kind of have to put your nose down a little bit in order to put the bullets on target, which they were able to do. And I recently found the Army's after action report for the Battle of Roberts Ridge with some pretty grotesque pictures. And you can see where the gun hit the trees and all kinds of things. I did a 6-part series on the Battle of Roberts Ridge for all your listeners back a while ago. And I interviewed the 2 helicopter pilots, Al Mack, pilot of Razor 3 that Neil Roberts fell out of. And then
fell out of the back, right?
Yeah, fell out of the back of. And then Greg Calvert, the pilot of Razor 1 that came up and with the rescue team, and that helicopter never left the top of the mountain. Greg took 11 rounds. You talk about some great Americans, and you know, I just fly tankers. But these guys that fly some of these missions in the 160th SOAR, missions they can't even talk about. And here's a recommendation I want to make to all of your listeners. Al Mack just recently published a book. It's called Razor 3. And he goes through the whole story of Roberts Ridge, and it's riveting. It's just, I just said those words, Razor 3 and Takragar Mountain, and a chill went up my spine just saying the words, because I was there watching it on the Predator. But Al was the guy who was flying the helicopter that was inserting Britt Slavinsky and Mako 30 and that whole team up there that started this whole thing. And so that book, Razor 3, is now on my 25 must-read books because it is so well done. And he's a guy that was involved in he tells a really funny story. So he gets shot down. Thank you. That's it. He gets shot down in, I think, tail number 476. And it's all shot up. It takes an RPG, all kinds of stuff. Well, fast forward to the following year, and it's the night before shock and awe, and he's inserting another SEAL team in. He's back in action, flying an MH-47 Chinook, and he's flying another SEAL team in. And the SEAL commander comes up to him. Well, you ever been shot down in one of these? And he turns around, he looks at him, he says, not only was I shot down, I was shot down in this one.
Nice.
And the SEAL guy goes, wait, you're that guy? And he goes, yeah, I'm that guy. You know, it's like,
yeah, right.
and you know what? Al and Greg, real humble guys. did all these fantastic missions. Many of them they can't even talk about. I was just texting Al Mack again today. I said, Al, I sat down and I read your book in one sitting. I literally read his book from cover to cover in about 6 hours because you just can't put it down.
Wow.
You hear about the 160th SOAR, but you never get to read about the 160th SOAR, particularly a guy like him that's been shot down in a famous battle that made all the newspapers. And there's 2 Congressional Medal of Honors awarded, one posthumously and one, of course, to Britt Slavinsky.
Jeez.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, I'll have to check.
geez,
that out.
there's really no agenda here. I'm just kind of going everywhere, aren't I?
No, I know. I mean,
we roll.
that's what we love about having you on, Sluggo. We just love to just hear what's going on in that AVGEEK brain of yours.
Yeah.
And some of your people are out there going, man, that must be a really different brain to live with.
AVGEEK brains are all
Absolutely.
the same in one way
love
or
it.
another.
You did send us a handful of videos and some pictures. I'd like to. We're running about an hour 25. I can't even believe that it feels like we just started talking.
Jeez,
Right.
Gentlemen,
But,
I will stay here as long as you want. Okay. I've
Oh,
eaten,
goodness.
I've gone to the bathroom. I've got everything covered. Okay.
But I would like to go through some of these videos if that's okay.
Bring up that
now,
F-14 picture again.
the F-14K one.
Yeah.
second
Bring up
here.
the F-14 refueling.
That is so cool. Is that the Iron Maiden, by the way?
It is. So let me talk about this picture. All right. Now, I had just been on the USS John F. Kennedy. Okay. This is a VF-14 top hatter F-14, and you can see the nose number 111, triple sticks. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So this is Camelot 111, and as you can see, it's loaded for air-to-air battle. You can see the sidewinders on the shoulders. You can see the AIM-7s on the bottom of the pylons. I think they were carrying 2 Phoenix in the pallets, the forward pallets. And that's the famous Iron Maiden. And for all of your listeners out there, we have 2 methods of air refueling. You saw the boom method in the videos a little while ago. This is the drogue method, and this is the method that predominantly most countries use, the probe and drogue method, because the air refueling slipway and receptacle is obviously heavy. It's a big piece of metal. This, as you can see, the probe is not very heavy at all. So what that is this big basket that weighs, I think, 257 pounds. All right.
Jeez.
Which is why the Navy calls it the Iron Maiden or the wrecking ball. Okay. And anybody that's ever watched hummingbirds at a hummingbird feeder, it's the same exact principle. They come up, they put that probe in the basket, it locks onto the probe, and they start pumping gas through it. Now that hose is not very big. We can only pump about 1,000 pounds a minute. That was the planning factor that we use. When we were refueling the F-14s, they would typically take 10,000, 8,000 pounds. So it's going to take us at least 8 to 10 minutes to give him or her his gas.
Oh,
Those were the planning factors. And then we used 2 minutes for the receiver that got his gas to move out, move to the wing, and for the next receiver to come in. When they were proficient enough, they could do it in like 45 seconds because everybody was moving.
Very cool.
So that system is used by other air forces, navies, so forth, because again, the probe doesn't weigh that much. And it just closes right into the fuselage, as you see. Now, we have what's called the boom drogue adapter, which hooks that onto our nozzle. And that thing just kind of dangles off the end of the nozzle. We also now have 33 pod sets that the KC-135 uses that has baskets in the pods made by Cobham. And
those are
I'm not going to go through. Yeah, they're out on the wings. Yeah, they're outboard of the they're outboard of the outboard engines. Okay, so we can trail those behind us. and refuel Navy airplanes that way. And then we can use boom, the Air Force or the AWACS or whatever. It's really a
Can
great
you have more than
capability.
one plane on at the same time?
Yes, you can on the probes, okay, on the baskets,
Right.
because they're so far apart. The one airplane that we had to worry about the most was the F-14, because you can see its wings are out. And when the wings are out like that, of course, they spread quite wide. So we could still put two F-14s on the Cobham pods. All right. Two F-18s, piece of cake. All right. Now, after the second Gulf War, I had the opportunity to brief Boeing and EADS Northrop Grumman. So the two tankers that were in competition, I got to talk to both manufacturers. And I told them, I said, look, you have to have wingtip pods. You have to have a centerline drogue as well as a centerline boom. In case one breaks or the pods breaks, you still have the opportunity to refuel. And you must make every tanker air refuelable, which is exactly what they did with the KC-46, exactly what they've done with the A330 also. The
KC-10 was with KC-10 was air refuelable as well, right?
Exactly. And it also had pods. We call them warp pods, okay? Wing air refueling pods. And what I did during the second Gulf War is I knew that all of the tankers that were at Akrotiri, Cyprus would be refueling predominantly Navy airplanes. So I put all of the multi-point refueling podded KC-135s at Akrotiri. One of the air wing commanders says, Sluggo, if I see you again, I'm going to kiss you right on the lips, because they hate that stupid Iron Maiden. All right. But we still had to use it because we only had so many pod sets. And I don't know why they only bought 33 pod sets for an Air Force that's got like 413 tankers, but that's what they did. And I think in the KC-10 community, there is 20 pod sets. And I put all of those at Al Dhafra to refuel the 3 aircraft carriers that we had in the Northern Arabian Gulf. And the reason you do that is because of maintenance. Because I didn't want to spread the pods across the whole area of responsibility. I want them all in one place so that if one of them broke, they were right there to fix in one place. And we found a problem with the Cobham pods. What was happening was the Navy airplanes were plugging into it, and it caused the sine wave of the hose to go up to the pod, come back, and it would snap the probes off. And guys were telling me they could feel it through the whole airplane. And so I sat down one day with the Navy's air refueling manual and our manual, and I was trying to find what's the problem here? What's the problem here? And then I found it. The take-up reel springs in the brand new MIPPERS pods, as we call them, were set to 5 knots of overtake. The Navy's NATOPS manual, air refueling manual, said they could use up to 10 to 15 knots of overtake because they wanted to get a hard lock in there. And so I had to send out a message to everybody telling them, slow down, use a little more finesse. We got to adjust the springs. And much to Cobham's credit, I can't say enough good things about Cobham. It's a British air refueling company that's got a great history that I'll go into some other time. They sent field service engineers to Akrotiri and adjusted every stinking one of them there. So that we no longer had the problem. Yeah. That is customer service. If I wanted to give you guys a lesson learned, that is customer service. You go and you do what you need to do so that your customer doesn't have problems. And as soon as they adjusted them, we didn't have another problem the whole time.
Lessons from the cockpit. There you go.
Lessons from the cockpit. Lessons
Hey,
from
Mark,
the cockpit.
one quick question about
Sure.
the Iron Maiden, the hose adapter versus the boom. What's the fuel flow per minute for each one? I'm guessing that the fuel flow is a lot higher.
It depends. A great question. It depends on how many pumps we use.
Uh-huh.
So for the F-16, we're only allowed to use one pump because it's got a small fuel system piping in it. All right. That makes sense. It's a small airplane. The F-15, we can use two. The B-52, we can use all four. And each pump on the boom is about 1,500 pounds per minute. Okay. The B-52, we can fill up at 6,000 pounds per minute.
Wow.
Wow.
It still takes a long time, though. My largest transfer of fuel was 103,500 pounds into a B-52. It took us 22 minutes.
Wow.
Wow.
We were hooked up for 22 minutes.
B-52.
Yeah, this is what it is. This is what it looks like from a B-52. This video right here. This is really a good video. Now here, listen. Here's the kerplunk.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
That's the toggles engaging so that now they're connected. 6th Air Mobility Wing is MacDill Air Force Base down in Tampa.
Yeah, Florida.
But the B-52s were typically taking about 80,000 pounds when they were going from Diego Garcia up to Afghanistan. We refueled them twice. There was 2 air refueling tracks. One was about 45 minutes away. It was called Durango. Another one was about 3 hours away called El Dorado. And going in country, we gave the B-52s 80,000 pounds because they're burning, I think it's like 20,000 pounds an hour with all the 8 engines going. And if they're really heavy and down lower, it goes up to like 24. The B-1 burns, I think it's 20,000 pounds an hour, 19,000 pounds an hour. But it's burning 8,000 pounds a minute when it's taking off in after all 4 engines in afterburner. I mean, it's really sucking down gas.
Wow.
Yeah, we've witnessed that by covering red flags with bones down there.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what it's
Crazy.
like, okay? And they stay in afterburner like up to 10,000 feet.
Oh yeah.
They hold, I think, 274,000 pounds of gas. You know, so they can afford to let the burners run for a little while.
Holy cow.
But,
274?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, 274,000
Wow.
pounds.
And how many pounds does a KC-135 hold?
We hold the warload that we were using was 180,000 pounds.
Jeez.
Wow.
And to put that in perspective for all of your listeners, that's about using your family car in 27 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Typical family burns about 1,000, maybe 1,100 gallons of gas a year. And 180,000 pounds would let you drive for about 27 years. And I'm using 6.5 pounds per gallon of kerosene, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know,
All right.
mileage may vary depending on your operations, you know, whatever.
Right.
But, whenever I do the math, I use 6.5. It depends on where you are. Sometimes it'll go 6.3, sometimes it's 6.7, depending on the type of kerosene you're using. So I just use 6.5 in all my calculations.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So we're getting close to being out of time 8 minutes ago, but that, hey, you know, that's what happens when we talk to Mark, because you're just such a,
That's right.
So the aircraft images guy says he'll stay as long as you want.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it.
Just means you guys have to have me on again. Okay.
Yeah,
the hog.
absolutely.
Let's talk about the hog. Okay.
hey, really,
This is the A10.
what are some really cool points?
This is the airplane that every ground infantryman loves. This is the airplane they want around. The F-15E, the F-16, yeah, they're fine. This is the airplane that any ground soldier wants to have with them for a bunch of reasons. A, it was built for close air support and attack. The pilot sits in a titanium bathtub, completely protected. Kim Campbell had a missile go off between the tails during the war in Iraq, and she was able to bring the airplane back. Buggered up the right tail and the right engine, and she was still able to get it back. You had to do this hydraulic system reversion thing that takes a while, but that's what you do when you get hit back there, and it buggered up one of her hydraulic systems. But incredible feat of flying, and she actually got a Distinguished Flying Cross for that particular mission, if I remember right. Now it carries Maverick missiles, as you can see, the green and the light gray. Those are anti-tank missiles. They can be anti-house missiles, anti-building missiles. You can use them against ships. It's really a great missile. The one that is green, I believe, is the imaging infrared Maverick that has the wonderful infrared image in its seeker. The one on the other side, I think, is a laser Maverick. I'm not sure. But there's 10 external hard points on the A-10, which you can put bombs and all kinds of things on. And they carry the 500-pound JDAMs. They carry the 2,000-pound JDAMs on the center line. There's an A-10 from Boise Air National Guard that was deployed for 6 months. During that 6 months, it shot 309,000 rounds of 30 millimeter. The whole bottom of the airplane was black. All right. And there's a great picture of it coming off the boom. And the guy just goes like this and flips it upside down. And you can see the whole bottom of the airplane's black. They were going through 30 millimeter cannon rounds like crazy. And that gun is part of the reason that airplane is still around, because it goes through a lot of armor. It's really an incredible weapon. And the gun has a sound all its own. Brrr.
Oh yeah.
You can go on YouTube and you can hear it anytime. You just put an A-10 gun and all kinds of videos will come up. That airplane was made to take punishment. There's a story, and I don't know how valid this story is, about Hans Ulrich Rudel, the famous tank buster of the Luftwaffe. He killed 900 tanks in a Stuka, coming over to the States, and they were able to talk to him about how he did his kill chain, find, fix, track, target, engage, assess. And they had originally put a 20 millimeter gun on the airplane and then went with the 30 that they've got on it now. And this 30 millimeter gun is massive. The drum is actually behind the pilot. The barrels go underneath the pilot. And the pilots will tell you, man, when you shoot that thing, I mean, it rattles the whole airplane.
Yeah.
But it is an incredible weapon, particularly when troops are in contact and they need close air support. They want to hear a hog.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
They want to hear the hog. And now they've got like a helmet mounted cueing system in them too.
Wow.
I don't think it's not the same Jehemics, but it's something different. But now they've got a helmet mounted sight in their airplane too. And they carry either lightning targeting pods or sniper targeting pods on them now also. So they've got the same way to laze and drop GBU-12 500-pound laser guided bombs. It's really an incredible airplane. Now we refuel those guys down low because they have the same engines that the S-3 Viking has in them, so they can't get up as high. And when I talked to Scott Campbell, A-10 pilot during Operation Anaconda, he wins 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses in 4 days. So he and Kim, his wife, amongst them, have 4 Distinguished Flying Crosses as a couple.
Wow.
That's got to be some kind of record.
Yeah, it is. It is a record. Okay. And I've had Scott on my podcast, and it was wonderful to have him on because they got a phone call in the middle of the night that they had to go down for what was going on at Roberts Ridge in Afghanistan. And I had to create the air refueling plan to get him down there. And so I looked him up on LinkedIn and found him and had him on the podcast. And he tells the whole story about going down there. And when you read his Distinguished Flying Cross citations, it's chilling what they had to do. It's
Oh, good.
really a great story. So
Wow.
that airplane, when we have troops in contact or you need close support, that's the airplane people want. That's the
Well-
and I'm sorry, all my F-16 guys, F-15E guys, everything. The hog. You talk to any Army guy and ask him, what airplane do you want in Overwatch over your head from the United States Air Force? And they will say, the hog.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I would
Not
imagine
that at all.
that's what it was made for. Wow.
So, Mark, you've mentioned your podcast a few times. Tell everybody how to hear the podcast, what platforms you can hear it on, and also we'd like to know about how and where to get your book as well.
Okay. My podcast is called Lessons from the Cockpit. There are 54 episodes as of yesterday. I did a podcast on a current event. It's the first time I've ever done this, on the balloon shoot down and the objects being shot down also. Inside the podcast, I have the audio from the balloon shoot down and the octagonal shoot down over Lake Huron, so you can hear it for yourself.
Mhm.
I have interviewed 160 SOAR pilots, 97-year-old Royce Williams, who shot down 4 MiG-15s flown by Russians during the Korean War, and he couldn't tell anybody about it for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
They just recently upgraded to the Navy Cross. They were trying to get Congressional Medal of Honor, but all of the evidence is on the Russian side. There was some articles that were published back a while ago that actually names the name of the pilots that were in the airplanes and what happened to them and everything. Mm-hmm. So he just got awarded the Navy Cross instead of a DFC. Wonderful, wonderful old gentleman, was an air wing commander flying F-4s off the Kitty Hawk during the 1965-66 timeframe in Vietnam, and is still alive and doing well. So my podcast is found just everywhere: Libsyn, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Libsyn is where I post, and it spreads it out to everybody. So if you just go Lessons from the Cockpit, Mark Hasara, it'll come right up. One of the things that I do also is I draw illustrations of the airplanes of the people that I interview. And what they are is 4, 6, and 8 foot vinyl graphics that you can peel off and stick on your walls of F-15Es, ME-109s. I'm working on helicopters. I don't know anything about helicopters. It's taken me months to get helicopters done. I'm just not a rotorhead guy. You know, I fly jets. So yeah. And they have up some of the folks that have bought some of my products. See the guy in the middle? He bought 6 graphics and the patches. And I'll get you guys in touch with him. He's got a book coming out. He flew with the Red Eagles and it's got some amazing stories of flying with the Red Eagles. His name is Rob Zettel, call sign Z-Man. And that's his hangar right there that you see. He basically wallpapered the back of his hangar with our products. And that's what we say: custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar.
Nice.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Very nice.
And my book is on Amazon in all 4 formats. It's hardback, softback, Audible, and Kindle. I would suggest you buy either the hardback or the Audible or Kindle versions. There is an extra file that comes with the Audible and Kindle versions that has the 32 pictures in the file.
Cool. Yeah.
The softback has them all in black and white. I don't know why they did that way, but that's why I say, you know, if you want the black and white pictures and you want a softback to carry around with you, go that way. But the hardback, the Audible, and the Kindle all have the color pictures in them. And there's 32 pictures. Most of them I took. A dear friend of mine who flies F-14 Tomcats was a Rio. Hey Joe Parsons took some of them, and then some of them I just got off the DoD Defense Visual Information Distribution Center website. So
yeah,
very cool.
Anyway.
One of the cool things about your book, really quick before we close, is now that I'm going through it a second time, it's like I feel like I know all these characters. You know, you just mentioned Hey Joe a minute ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just that whole chapter when you went and you hung out with him when you were on the JFK, right?
The very first time I was on an aircraft carrier, he was my escort. And
Yes.
the reason they put us together was because we're both photography nuts.
Mhm.
And when they found out I brought my camera with them, they went, "Oh, we know who to put you with." Okay. And so Dave Parsons, a great American, Hey Joe
Mhm.
is his call sign. He was an F-14 Rio in the Gypsies, VF-32 Swordsman. And on his Desert Storm missions, he had his camera with him because the Intel guys were giving him rolls of film and would develop it for him. They said, yeah, shoot it as much as you want because we'll bring it back here and we'll develop it and so forth. So he has like 3 or 4 shoe boxes full of slides from his time in flying Tomcats. Yeah, it's really amazing. So he's got some just absolutely fantastic pictures, and some of his pictures are in the book where he's hanging out on the tanker in his F-14, and there's like A7s and F-18s getting refueled underneath him. And then there's another one where he's plugged into the basket that you saw, the drogue in that picture of Camelot 111. He's got another one looking up at the basket, which is a really cool picture too. And then really quick story. Okay. I told you guys, you're going to keep me just going and going and going.
Jeez, Mark.
Why do you think we have you on?
I kept my camera everywhere I went when I was flying tankers, and like 10 rolls of film in my helmet bag. And on one mission, we were up refueling the Navy over the Red Sea during Desert Shield, about the 15th, 16th of December, 1990. And Dave Parsons gave me his squadron UHF frequency. And he says, if you're ever up here, just go to this UHF frequency and find me. And so we get up there and we're overhead the John F. Kennedy, and I tune that thing in. And I go, hey, Joe, check. And I tell this story in the book. Hey, Joe, check. Hey, Joe, here. Sluggo's flying the tanker. Be there 10 minutes. And so about 5 minutes later, he's going, we're inbound. And I go, okay, where are you? He says, we're 3 miles out. I go, okay, where are you? We're about 2 miles out. And I go, okay, where are you? He says, look up. And I look up through the eyebrow windows just in time to see 2 Tomcats flip over like this and split us to the boom.
Oh,
nice.
And I tell my boom operator, Rick Brack, I said, here they come, here they come. And from the back, he goes, I don't see him, I don't see him. Oh, yeah, you know, as they show up on the drogue, okay? And he says, hey, Sluggo, how much can you give us? And I said, dude, if you'll hang outside my window and let me take pictures, I'll give you whatever you want.
Right.
Can you give us 10,000 pounds? I says, we just showed up. I got 85,000 pounds to give you. And he goes, great. So they both plug in, and he comes right outside the window. And the really cool thing is it's both billboard jets from VF-32 Swordsman. So it's got the beautiful yellow sword on the tail. It's got the navy blue tails. You know, it's got the gold gray overall paint scheme, and they're loaded with live weapons. And so he's taking pictures of me, and I'm in the cockpit going like this, while he's looking up at me going like this. And so there's 2 pictures in the book of me looking down at him, all right, and him as he just joins on us, getting ready to take gas. And everybody gets a kick out of that story when I tell it, you know.
Story.
You know, never mind flying the jet. Let's take pictures, man.
Absolutely.
And everybody asks me, everybody asks me, goes, you know, you're flying a multi-million-dollar jet. You're this close, and you're taking pictures. And I said, well, yeah, that's what autopilot's for.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
That's what autopilot's for. You know, I just got to reach down and just turn the knob. You know, and so
absolutely.
So please, folks, go out and buy the book. There's the book up there.
Okay. Absolutely.
Once again, Tanker Pilot: Lessons from the Cockpit by the guy on my. Where are you? On my right.
Your left.
Yeah.
Your left.
My left. Dang it! I had a 50-50 chance.
And that's a picture I took. The cover
Nice.
is
Yes.
the picture I took.
Absolutely.
I have 3 rides in an F-15, one of them over Alaska, and this is the picture that I took of 4 F-15s from the 67th Fighter Squadron, the Fighting Cocks, over Alaska during an Alaska Red Flag, and I was in the back seat with Elwood Amadon in the front seat, and that's a picture I took that's on the cover. Simon and
Wow.
Sushi
Very
said,
cool.
"Oh man, we love this picture," and they made the cover out of it.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Also, markhasara.com. That way you can get information on Wall Pilot. You can also go to his podcast. Lessons in
It's all
Podcast
there. I
as
also do
Awesome.
public speaking, if you guys haven't noticed.
and I was just going to say, all right, we're going to do one more really quick question. I promise. This just came in from Aircraft Images, just really quick. And I know this because I've been down there.
But this is a great question, and I get asked this a lot. Aircraft Images, you have a great question here, okay? How much room is in a boom pod is what he's asking, okay? So there's actually, in the KC-135, quite a bit of room. So there's a center couch that goes down basically the center line of the airplane that the boom operator lays down in and controls the boom with 2 handles in his left and right hand, okay? One that makes it go up and down and fly side to side and everything. And then another one up here on the panel that extends the boom into the receptacle, right? If we're refueling the Navy and we've got the basket on, you just hold the thing out there. You know, you extend it full out, put it down at 30 degrees, and you just hold it there and let them do all the work. On either side of that center couch is 2 more couches where instructors can sit or lay down. That's what they're made for. They're like instructor couches. But normally when we're refueling and we've got people on board the airplane, we like to bring people to the back and just say, hey, here's what it looks like. And of course, everybody comes back there with their cameras. And every time that we went, when I was flying out of Okinawa, we'd fly up to Alaska, we'd have F-15s under us. Every time we'd start refueling, you know, people would head off to the back to take pictures. And a lot of people would stand up at the top, you know, because I can't get down there. You know, they don't want me down there. I don't want to get in the way. And of course, I would go, come on down. Come on, take a look. Come on, take a look. And it was really fun, particularly when we had young kids on the airplane. They'd come down and they were just awestruck. They were like, it was funny because the kids would never say anything. The young kids would never say anything. Their jaws would just drop to the ground. They just watch, you know, and we'd put the headset on them so they could hear us talk. And it was always fun to have kids in the boom pod. So, Tony, I would say about 8 to 10 feet across with the 2 couches, maybe 12.
Aaron and I have both been there.
All right.
Brian, have you been before?
Yeah, I've been in some. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So there's actually quite a bit of room when you're laying down back there. Now, in the KC-10, you're actually sitting in really nice chairs. There's 3 chairs. The center one is where the boom operator is sitting and operating the boom. And then there's instructor stations on both sides. They're really nice chairs. They're very comfortable. It's got a really big boom sighting window. And of course, the thing about the KC-10, it's got a centerline boom and a centerline drogue, and has the capability of carrying the wing air refueling pods, the warp pods too. But it's a big window, and my KC-10 boom operator buddies get some really good pictures in that great big huge boom sighting one. Ours is pretty good size too, but not like theirs. Theirs is like twice the size.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good size. So
Well, Mark,
that's how much room's back there.
Right. I have to ask you one last question.
What's that?
When you want to come back on the podcast?
That's up to you guys.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
That's up to you guys.
Still, and we're out of time, and we still haven't talked about the Soleimani strike that you promised at the end of the first time you were on. We never got to it, so we'll have to keep people hanging on until the next episode so we can talk about that. Deal?
Well, sounds like a plan for next month, huh?
Yes, definitely.
Or whenever.
Yeah.
You guys know how to get a hold of me.
Absolutely.
All right? And you know
definitely.
and you know that I'll wipe off my schedule if you guys want to have me come back on. The Soleimani strike, and for all of you that are listening, Qasem Soleimani was a major general in the Iranian Republican Guard that was causing the Americans a lot of problems. And there was an attack on our embassy around Christmas time while President Trump was president. And about a week later, Soleimani was very arrogant. He didn't think the Americans would never touch him.
Yeah.
And a Reaper drone reached out and touched him real good.
Oh, yes. So we will definitely talk about that next time you're on. Mark,
and when we do, we'll talk about the different kinds of missiles that they're putting on the Reapers now too, because there's we'll talk about the Ginzu missile, as they call it.
Some wicked stuff. Yeah.
The Ginzu missile.
Well, Mark, thank you once again for joining us on the RampCheck podcast. You set another record, 3-time guest. We really appreciate that, and we'll definitely have you on a 4th.
And I think I talked for 2 hours the last 2 times too.
Oh yeah,
probably, but it's okay.
We're logging the hours, and we love every minute of it.
Well, I hope I haven't scared some of your listeners off. Like, oh my gosh, we got inside the brain of this Hasara guy, but.
Nope.
But
not at all.
Please go by and listen to my podcast, Lessons from the Cockpit.
Yes.
And you can find it Spotify, Apple, Libsyn, everywhere. And like I said, in the show notes, these prints that I have, you can see one behind me here. This is the tanker print. This is 8874. I did a print of 8874 and put it here behind me.
That's awesome.
That's how I support our my podcast is with sales of these things. And I'm working on helicopters. I'm working on Apache and Sea Kings right now. I'm not a helicopter guy, but those will be done pretty soon. But I've got F4s, F-15s, Strike Eagles. I've got, believe it or not, B5N2 Kates, ME-109s, all kinds of stuff that's up there.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Thanks again, guys, for having me on.
Thank you, Sluggo. We really appreciate your time. We love hearing all your stories and your perspective on things. Thank you for your service as well.
Thank you very much, guys.
And we're honored to have you on always, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
We need to get Ryan up here north so that we can go out to lunch.
Yeah,
I'll get up there. You betcha.
Yeah, Tony's the one.
Tony needs to come up. I'm up here, so we can.
Yes,
and
do lunch.
I still have cigars for you guys from a very important fellow in my life.
Oh yes, we need to do that.
Yep, definitely be honored for that.
Before we go, speaking of supporting the podcast, of course, www.rampcheckglobal.com. That takes you to our Ramp Swag store, and we've got a whole bunch of cool new Ramp Swag out there. You need to check out.
All these
to all your listeners, I still have that RampCheck Global patch on my visor in my Chrysler.
Nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Lovely.
It's still there.
Love it.
Cool.
This is really good
anyway,
stuff, folks. I have some of their swag, and my wife wears the tanker shirt that you sent to her even to this day. She had it on the other day.
That's awesome.
I said, "Hey, I'm doing a podcast with the RampCheck Global guys again," and she went and put the T-shirt on.
Ah, nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
Love it. Love to hear it.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate it.
You too. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
All right. Wow. We could go on for two more hours.
Gotta love Mark's perspective.
It's like story time with him. I love it. He's got some of the
I just
stories.
love sitting here listening, and I'll throw in an occasional question or something, but just love hearing him talk.
Easy night for me. Like, I just sit and listen. I love it. I mean, just the incredible experiences he has, and the knowledge. I mean, all the acronyms and pilot names he remembers, and I'm just like, holy cow, this guy remembers everything. So that was really fun having him on. Thanks, Mark, for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can get your Ram Swag KC-135 gear at the Ram Swag store.
Got some more coming too.
Well, yes, perfect. Oh, well, you can catch the RampCheck podcast every Wednesday night, live streaming right here on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. If you're on Facebook or Twitter tonight, jump on over to YouTube, subscribe to the podcast, like what you see, of course, share it with your friends, and hit that little notification bell. That way you'll know every time we put something else up there. We've got lots more guests coming up as well. Not going to reveal them now because we're not sure who we're going to have on next.
Yeah,
So
we'll just keep
make
going.
sure you hit that notification bell so you know who will be on the podcast. Geez, did I miss anything, guys?
No, we just
I don't
want
think
to
so.
thank Aircraft Images, Little Hess, Big Hess, or Daddy Hess, Papa Hess.
Don't call him Big Daddy. He'll go to his head.
Right. That's awesome.
Plus Aid over in the UK. So
yes,
and others too that watch or chimed in. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
The silent watchers, the mystery watchers.
That's right.
Yes. So thanks again. Please share the podcast. Audio versions are available, of course, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Audible. Who am I missing? Pandora, Spotify. Did I say Spotify? Anyway, pretty much wherever you get your podcast, you can also listen to the audio version as well. This is a nice long one to listen to, but you're going to want to watch it. So I don't know why I'm telling you that, because if you haven't watched it, you're watching it now. This whole live thing is so confusing. Anyway, all right. For the RampCheck podcast, I'm Tony.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Ryan. Everyone have a good day.